if you want a really nice tight weave with no gaps, you're gonna end up sewing that gap up once you've taken the weaving off the loom. So you can get started. I'll draw this on here. You should do the same. She'll just help you keep track of what you're doing. So we're gonna start with a steeper line and then start to kind of curve it a little more, so that you can get an idea of the varying, of how to kind of vary that as you go. So you're gonna start here. I'm just gonna weave it until I come to the line, and then I'm gonna introduce my green. I'll weave it once around, and now I'm going to cross it like we did in that interlocking method and wrap it around once and leave it there while I travel the white across and back. And then we're crossing it again, looping that again. And this is an even more important place to be really careful about your tension when you're crossing over, because that's really going to affect the look of the line. If it's loose, it's going to be thicker. If it's tight, it's going to be thinner. We want to keep it really nice and balanced in there so that the line remains the same width the whole way through. So for now, I'm just going straight up every time I'm crossing. And yeah, so it's really just using that interlocking method. And just as you're doing that, just twisting it around that single warp. And so you just, when you're doing this, just really, this is about focusing on getting your line to feel nice and even, feeling like you're not pulling too much one way or the other. Really just trying to figure out your tension here. I think I'm actually not gonna follow my line in the end, just because I made it pretty tall and it's not necessary for the sake of example to do that long of a line. But I do suggest that you follow the line that you draw so that, again, you get practice with following a shape that you set out to make. I will just do this last row and then I'm gonna start to kind of curve it. So now I'm just gonna wrap it around to finish that row, and then come one in here and meet the white yarn at that point, cross it at this new intersection. That's one more warp end to the right, and start wrapping around there. And so you can see how this could just be continued as a straight line, or now you can start to create the curve like what we're doing here. And the curve is variable in the same way that the curve of the circle is, just depending on how many times you stack those passes on top of each other. Check that in. And I guess I haven't said this explicitly, I will have said this in class, but as a reminder, I'm trying to leave my ends hanging in the middle of a swath of color rather than on the end. It's easier to deal with, it's neater. It'll keep your life a lot easier. Alright, and now I'm gonna again step one more warp end to the right. Alright, and now I'm gonna step again one more time to the right and just do a couple passes over there to kind of get that curving effect that we we're looking for. And there we go. So that is the line, and now we're gonna fill it in on the other side, just like how we've been doing. Very simple. I prefer to start in the middle than on the edge, so that I can just bring that back there and don't have to do any extra moves to tuck it in. And so you can see this line is, you know, it's decent, but it's not as close to as thin as that, and not quite as neat either. And you know, it could be neater. I could be doing it with more care and making sure it's a little, but there is a lot of it is just inherent in the technique that you have to use. So it's something to consider, like, really, if you're not a very, you know, if you're beginning your tapestry journey, you don't want to start with a drawing that has outlines or anything like that, because it's just a headache, and yeah, just a real pain for you, and I don't think it's at all necessary to create a beautiful design to use outlines. But you know, this technique can still come in handy for various things. You know, like sometimes you want your shapes to get smaller, and they do need to be oriented in this particular way, or you know, say you're like trying to weave a blade of grass or something like that. This becomes really helpful. right? And there's your line. Really, I didn't achieve much of that curve. I wasn't, again, I diverged from my drawing, so wasn't paying all that much attention, just kind of trying to show you how to build up and then step in. If I would to get that curve, I would have spent a lot more time building up this first column and the second one as well to kind of lengthen that. And yeah, as you can see, but the point of the technique is that you can go up as far as you want with that straight, and then, you know, do whatever you want with that coming this way or that way or zigzagging or but yeah, that's the basics of doing a vertical or steep diagonal line. Yeah, and that is the last of your sampler techniques.